everyone, and today we're going to be in chapter 7, which deals with followership. Now, you may be wondering, why followership? This is a leadership course. Well, that's true, but you probably heard that term in the past that says, in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. And when you take a look through history at some of the great leaders that have emerged, you know that they spent time prior to that learning, developing, and that's what we really are trying to understand today when it comes to followership. How can you be not only a good follower, but how can you glean those characteristics so that when the time comes, you can be a great leader? So today, this is what we're going to be looking at. Okay, everybody, today we are in chapter 7, which deals with followerships. And as I said in the introduction, this is a course on leadership. Well, you need to be able to be a good follower before you can be a good leader. And I believe the characteristics that you can develop as a follower will help you into your role as a leader. So let's take a look at followership today. Now, as you see in Exhibit 7.1, good leaders manage both up and down the hierarchy. From a leadership perspective, you do more than just give orders or set the vision. You take input, and a good leader will take the resources and the support of those who are under his or her authority. So that is really taking that advice and support is what we call managing up. And as a leader, we also manage down, which means that not only do we support the followers, but the followers also have people probably following them. So we see here a pyramid of up and down dynamics that involve the relationship between the leader and the follower. Now let's go ahead and define what we mean by managing up. As the textbook indicates, it's consciously and deliberately developing a meaningful, task-related, mutually respectful relationship with your direct superiors. So you are making a concerted effort to develop more intimacy, more relational interaction with the people who are over you in order to be able to support them more. And you know, that's kind of foreign to us when we take a look at really the culture that we live in. Today, we're all about independence and individualism and so forth, and we really don't think of our job as being one that directly supports the leadership. We pretty much are passive in that area in many respects, whereas we expect the leader to tell us what to do and we just do it. Today, though, in learning organizations and in organizations today that are thriving on creativity and innovation and growth, we see here the emergence of this managing up phenomenon where the people who are under leadership are taking more responsibility, they're becoming more involved, and that's a good thing. And the organization, when you are working like that, the organization can thrive with that type of model. Now, managing up presents unique challenges. New things never come easy. And with managing up, it takes a mindset that needs to evolve from just the boss giving orders to where you're directly involved. And some people are not comfortable with that. The idea of managing bosses can be uncomfortable. And sometimes being a follower, if you are under the authority of the what we say old school type of leaders, they may not want you managing them. They may not want that interaction. So part of your responsibility, if you're going to be a good follower, is to help educate them and kind of grease the skids in transferring and transforming yourself into more than just a passive person who is just taking orders. And some people are not comfortable with control in that relationship. If you're not in control of the relationship, then sometimes people feel threatened, and that goes both ways. I mean, the follower can only do so much, and the follower may not have control of that relationship. And leaders may not want to give up control of that relationship. Yeah, I'll listen to your advice, and that's really what they want is just your advice in many cases. So we need to get them out of that paradigm, and you as a follower can do that. Now, when it comes to what the leader wants from you, uh, take a look at what we see here, a make it happen attitude. Uh, Bosses, and I've had it myself in leadership positions, you talk to people, encourage them, and they'll give you excuses on why, as to why they can't do it, and the obstacles and the hurdles. Folks, that can be frustrating. In the military, when I was serving in the military, they didn't want to hear that. You were expected to make things happen. If it was difficult, that's fine. But you were still expected to make things happen. It was your responsibility. If things were out of your control and you needed additional resources, to go and inform the leadership, hey, I need this and I need that. But to say I can't do that is really not in our vocabulary. And those are the people that your leaders need, a person who has a make it happen attitude, also a willingness to collaborate. Uh, Many times we see the all or nothing ideology, where if I don't get my way, we're just not going to play. We're not going to participate. No, you have to have a willingness to collaborate with leadership and with others as well. And that means when you collaborate, you're working together. It's not, boss, you need to do this, or boss, you need to do that, and the boss says you need to do this and that. You come together and you collaborate on issues, discuss it, think it through, and take and give as it's necessary to make sure that that objective is met. A motivation to stay up to date. And in the world that we live in today, we know that information is key, knowledge is key, and having the most up to date information on models and technology and processes and all of that will help your leader tremendously. Think about what the leader has to deal with on a daily basis. There are all types of responsibilities that play upon the leader, and the leader may not be able to stay on top of every little issue or circumstance or trend or model that's out there that would affect that organization. So the more you're on top of things and the more knowledgeable you are, the more likely the leader is going to let you take the reins and use that to support the organization. And a passion to drive your own growth. You know, when you think about it, what you're doing now as a follower, you're really in training. This is the area and the time where you are learning things, you're learning concepts, you're learning methodologies, you're learning as much as you can, and you are driven, hopefully, to keep pursuing knowledge, experience, education, all of these things. You are growing, and part of that takes place, a large part of it takes place when you are in the follower position. In fact, you're at the best time you can be when you're a follower and you want to grow. Because as a leader, you're going to be bombarded with requirements that may not allow you to develop very much further from where you're at right now. But a passion to drive your own growth is a key part of followership. Now, the textbook talks about the styles of followership. Now, style is determined, as you see here on the slide, by two dimensions: critical thinking versus uncritical thinking, active versus passive behavior. So let's take a look at those two dynamics. Critical thinking is thinking independently and being mindful of the effects of one's own and other people's behavior on achieving the organization's vision. Now, I don't remember if we have talked about systems perspective yet, but systems perspective allows you to step away from the trees and see the forest. You don't see things as individual, independent components of an overall whole. You see each of these components comprising the whole. And if something breaks down, one of those components breaks down, it's going to affect the whole. And this is how critical thinking occurs. You don't see things in a vacuum. You see things as an interdependent element that is affected by and does affect others in that organization. For instance, if you are the president of a college and you have the admissions department not doing well in recruiting new students, well, ultimately that's going to affect finances. It's going to affect academics, because the fewer students you have, the fewer amount of money that you're going to generate, and it'll have an overall effect on everybody. And that's just one component, admissions, who may be the culprit in all of this. But it's not just admissions. Admissions needs to realize, as well as the followers and the leadership, that whatever someone does in an organization, it will have an effect on other areas of that organization. Now, uncritical thinking is failing to consider possibilities beyond what one is told. So it's the do as I say type of mentality. I'm just going to do what the boss says, and that's going to be it. However, today in business, if you're going to be creative, if you're going to be innovative, if you're going to be at the top of the industry, you're going to have to solicit the ideas of people who are working under you, who follow you. I've never refused to listen to anybody if they had a suggestion. I don't care if it's the janitor, because each person sees things from their own perspective. And I can't be everywhere and do everything and know all of the possibilities that can occur or that may be available for whatever organization I may be a part of. So when I was in leadership, I would take the recommendations and I would take the advice of everybody. Didn't mean that I would go along with it, but at least I saw things from another point of view. And I didn't just, whether it was as a follower or a leader, just take things at face value. Okay, this is what I'm told to do. Now, there are some things, let's say, for instance, in the fire department, where your fire captain may tell someone, I need you to go up on the second floor and put out that fire. Well, then is not the time for a debate. Now, are you sure I need to go to the second floor? Could I? No. There are opportunities for critical thinking where you can put input in, but there are also times when you just need to do what you're told. So knowing the difference is important. And accepting the leader's ideas without thinking, that's groupthink. And it's a phenomenon that takes place when all you want to do is be on the same wavelength as the leader. You don't want to challenge. You just want to keep things smooth. You don't want to rock the boat. And that can be fatal. When you take a look at the space shuttles blowing up. Uh, Both times, those could have been prevented had it not been for groupthink, people wanting to just conform and not go against the grain. Let's just agree and move on. And as you see, that was tragic. Now, you may not be involved in something as dramatic and fatal as that, but if you're not there to challenge and to think on your own and be able to communicate your input, that can also be damaging to that organization. Now, Exhibit 7.2 just talks about followership styles. You have the follower type, and I'll let you take a look at that. It goes from alienated follower to effective follower, the thinking style from independent, uh, dependent to critical thinker, and then levels of engagement. You can be passive in the organization, and that's what I see a lot of times today when I teach business, and especially at the master's level. And I talk to these professionals in these organizations who come to my class. Many of them will say, I'm just there to draw a paycheck. I clock in and I clock out. They don't have much respect or involvement in the organization or its leadership, so they're just there passively. Well, that's really not, they complain about the organization, but yet they're not doing anything actively to try to make it better. They've just gone along now with the flow, and that's not good followership, and it's not good professionalism. So these are the different areas when it comes to styles that we consider when it comes to followership. Now, you might be wondering, well, what do I do then as a follower? What kind of strategies can I incorporate to better support the leadership and the organization? And folks, this goes for churches too. I can tell you, as a pastor, I cherish the input and the wisdom of those who are under my authority at the church, my ministers. Uh, I have a hard time and have had a hard time in the past with people who just have the attitude, well, if the pastor says it, then that must be true and we'll follow it without question. Well, folks, that means I have to be correct in everything that I say. And I'm just as human as anybody else. I thrive on debate and collaboration. But oftentimes you're going to find in leadership that many of the followers don't want to challenge. They don't understand my needs. And to have that collaboration and discourse. So helping to understand or helping the leader is important. Understanding the leader is one of the first steps. Learn the goals, needs, strengths, and weaknesses and organizational constraints. You can do a SWOT analysis on that. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal to the organization or the person, and opportunities and threats are external to the organization, and you can list all of them and develop strategies to, once identifying those areas, you can develop strategies to improve the organization. Study the leader's work style. You don't have to mimic it, but study, understand how the leader works, and as best you can, how he thinks or she thinks. Use specific tactics to improve relationships. Be a resource. That's what we're called to do. We're to be good stewards with what God has given us. And if you remember how the landowner, when he handed out the 3 talents to the servants, he expected a return on that. And the first 2 came back with a return. But the third did nothing. He was no resource at all. He was dead weight, and he was cursed for that. So being a good resource for your employer or your leader is important. Help the leader be a good leader. Help him learn by the things that you see that may be hurting him or her, and be there to build up. And that's what Paul tells us to do. We're to build each other up. And as iron sharpens iron, so too can you do that as a follower. Build a relationship with the leader. Leadership is a lonely, lonely place to be. Sometimes I can sit in my office at church and everybody seems to be a million miles away. So being a good support, building a good relationship with the leader is important. And view the leader realistically. We have what's called the halo effect, and we see no wrong in some people, even though they are flawed. Uh, but we need to look at the leader realistically. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this individual? And to be able to take that and use that in a way that's going to help you help that leader. Now, Exhibit 7.3 talks about the ways to influence your leader. We talk about being a resource. This is how you can be that. Help the leader be a good leader, build relationships, and view the leader realistically. And we've talked about that a little bit in each one of these sections, so we'll move on from there. Now, being a good follower means that you have to be courageous. You're venturing out into a realm that's rarely exercised or even studied. But being a good follower requires that you have the courage to assume responsibility. I'll take this on and I'll do this, or I'll take this load off of you. Well, if you take it off of them and put it on yourself, you're assuming responsibility. So don't make the mistake a lot of times of taking on too much. The courage to challenge. There's nothing wrong if you respectfully challenge what the leader is saying or the direction the leader is taking. The leader may realize, hey, you're right. I didn't think about that. And I've done that many times as a leader. Appreciate my people because they did say, Pastor Tom or Dr. Marshall, have you thought about this? Or this is my concern with what you're wanting to do. I don't mind it at all. But again, it's how you do it. If you go up, well, that was a stupid idea, or you don't know what you're talking about, that's what gets people in trouble. And that's where you lose that respect and relationship for your followers. Courage to participate in transformation, and that's change. And when we get into the realm of change management, what we are dealing with is taking old beliefs, paradigms, and transforming them into new ones. And I'll be honest with you, many organizations cannot do that. They are so ingrained and so content with the way things are that they don't want to change. So you need to have the courage to participate in transformation, and sometimes it may mean transforming you so that you can be a resource for change in that organization. Courage to serve. Serve means that you are there for the benefit of others. You're there to build up others, and you're there to participate. And courage to live. And that kind of goes without saying. I mean, it's not cumbersome. It shouldn't be cumbersome to be a good follower, but you need to prioritize. What are the important things in life that I need to focus on and go after those things? Exhibit 7.5 talks about desirable characteristics. We want our leaders to be honest and forward-thinking and competent and inspiring. And in our followers, we want them to be honest. And notice how both of those are at the top, cooperative, dependable, and competent. So it's not a matter of just having good intentions. You need to be able to demonstrate competency and dependability and cooperation within that organization, not just with the boss, but with others. And your boss or your leader will see that, and you gain more credibility that way. The leaders can enhance followers' abilities and contributions by clarity of direction. Um, One of the requisites for good leadership is to be able to know where you're going. I mean, Moses had that when he followed God. Um, we do that today. If you don't have a vision or a sense of direction, the Bible says that the people go into disarray. So we need to have a clarity of direction to communicate to the followers. We need to provide opportunities for growth. I mean, if they see no opportunities for self enhancement and enrichment and growth, then chances are they're not going to be engaged in that organization. We need frequent, specific, and immediate feedback on how the follower is doing. And to do that, we can do it informally. You don't necessarily have to sit them down and fill out forms after forms after forms. You can just sit down and tell them, hey, I appreciate that. You did a good job on that. However, I would like for you to focus on these areas a little bit more, and I think that would round you out. Make it a positive experience, but give them frequent, specific, and immediate feedback, and protection from organization intrusions. Don't let others try to interfere with what the followers who are there for the right reasons are trying to do. Don't let, if at all possible, other areas or other responsibilities interfere with what the follower is trying to do. Don't heap on them things that other people can do. Let them do what you called them to do. Let them support you. And feedback is just using evaluation and communication to help individuals and the organization learn and improve from that learning. And there is much value when you get to the area of feedback. Feedback is one of those things that we really don't focus on a whole lot, but it's necessary. How are they going to know how well they're doing until you tell them how they're doing? And give them encouragement, but also give them constructive criticisms. And in our last slide here, we see feedback tips. Make it timely. We talked about that. Focus on the performance, not the person. It makes no difference if you like them or if you dislike them. They're not there to be your friend as much as they are to be your resource. So you need to focus on the performance in light of it being a resource. Make it specific. Give them measurable objectives. Uh, Jane, I'd like to see you increase productivity in your department by 30%. Uh, and that would greatly help me. Or James, you want to help me and be a resource. I'd like you to take this project that I've been struggling with and give me some recommendations. Give me 4 recommendations on improvement on this idea that we have here, or this objective that we have here. So make it specific. Set out timelines if necessary. Percentages and numbers are great so that we can quantify that performance. And then focus on the desired future, not the past. I've heard time and time again that old saying in church, we've never done it this way before and we're not about to start now. Don't worry about what's not been or what has been done before. You worry about the future and let that be the vision that your organization and your leaders espouse. Well, as you saw, being a good follower is just as complex and has just as many complexities as leadership does. So, when we take a look at what we need to do, not only as professional people, but as Christians, in order to support our leaders, we can see that when we apply those principles correctly, we can be a great resource and a great asset to those who are in authority. I think about the disciples, and I also think about Jesus, who was that servant leader. He showed us humility, he showed us love, he showed us generosity, and a desire for others to prosper. And that's how it should be with us when it comes to our churches and when it comes to our businesses. Well, that's all we have for today. You have a good day, and we'll see you when we start up on chapter 8.